Hey, wee wee! We just got a message from Russell there.
Oh,
He's a happy episode 20. He made us a meme. That's so cute. He says here, Murphy, Foundry Files, Murphy and wee wee talking. I'd rather eat dog feces.
and welcome to the Foundry Files. I'm Wee Wee, and that direction is it?
Yeah,
Is
that
it-
way. Over
Yeah,
there.
that is direction. It's
Yeah,
that
there.
direction.
Hey,
Fine,
dude.
good.
High five. Let's see if we can actually pull this off. High five. Ready? Ready? Go. Pah! Hey, that kind of worked, except I'm farther back than you. But anyway, yeah, that's Wee Wee over there. Oh, I just pointed the wrong way. There we go. All the credit gone. That's Wee Wee. I'm Adam Murphy. This is Foundry Files, episode 20. Boo! This feels like a big episode. Probably just because we got new graphic bumps, new intros, and stuff like that. So I want to give another thank you, I think, to Lee Andrews. Brilliant. He's basically like saved the show because my editing software crashed on me, so I lost like all of our bumps and stuff. So he quickly pumped some of these out, and they're awesome. I love them. They're actually way better than the other ones. So I hope you guys enjoy that in this week's episode. Hopefully this episode is actually coming out on Tuesday because that means then I actually got the new editing software to work. So
Hang on. Did you lose the bumping software, the segments, the transitions, just like Chris did in the airlock? You just took them out of the airlock.
no, it's basically the Final Cut tool is not letting me make any edits to any
You
project
airlocked
or
them, didn't you?
save.
You
No, they're
airlocked them.
there. It's just I can't change
You
them.
failed me.
I can't
No,
move
you
them.
airlocked them.
I
You
can't
airlocked them.
edit, so I can't even move them out of Final Cut to this new software. So it's just like whatever
Excuses.
until I fix it.
Don't believe him. Don't believe him. He's making up.
Coming from you with the wee wee virus, I'm pretty sure is right now on my Mac side. Yeah. Anyway, what are we doing this week, wee wee? What's so big for episode 20?
Well, we're covering a bit of Neverwinter stuff.
Yeah,
well,
'cause we
most
can
of
talk
you
about
are. You are, yeah. You're more integrated into
I'm
that
sorry,
kind of thing.
guys. I didn't think I could talk about any of Neverwinter last week, but I could talk about the gameplay. The Foundry, however, is still in
Kill him.
alpha, so I can't talk
Kill him with
about the
fire.
editor specifically.
Well, a month ago as well, we said we'll visit a couple of weeks later after that new Foundry reward system is of how high the grinding missions are up and how it scales with the different rewards.
Mhm.
We're doing that today. It's about time we did it. It's been a month. I think we've given it enough time. We'll do that today. Then we go into quick tips. We're nearing the end of quick tips.
Last segment
Nearing the end of our
next week.
sheet, yep. We're doing classic issues and mission scaling today. Well, Murphy is.
Yep.
And we have a review, part 2 of Captain Revo's series, The Hunter Killer. After Crouching Tiger Core Hidden Demon, I think it was last week, wasn't it?
Yep.
Part 1. And then we finally get into a discussion later on with a 5-star rating system discussion about the pros and the cons of it.
Yeah,
And how it can it be improved,
because there's
how
definitely a lot of
opinions
opinions
of it.
on this.
and what are the different aspects of it.
hmm So hey, why don't we roll into news a while and get this show going? Hello and welcome to news. Big news, not Foundry related, but Hakeem lives! For those of you who didn't check out the bump, that's been like my slogan this week, just telling everybody Hakeem lives and stuff. If you didn't see the new banner for that Romulan Beneath the Raptor's Wings page is like a planet. We don't know which planet. I'm assuming New Romulus, but it's a planet. And then like a face in the background. And that face reminds me of Hakeev, so I'm going with it's Hakeev. He somehow survived, or it's a clone, or they brought him back to life, or it's an alternate reality version of Hakeev, or we time travel to the past and we see Hakeev. See, this is why I love sci-fi. It gets so complex when you bring characters back. But
You know what I'm expecting?
What?
Expecting? If that isn't Hakeem, and it turns out not to be him, it's somebody completely random, can I make fun of you on the show?
Sure.
Because that would be
Maybe
really,
it's
really
his twin
funny.
brother.
He was like, I called Hakeem,
Nev.
and it's not really.
I don't know, but I was pumped when I saw that. I didn't like. I just looked at it like it's just a planet, boring. But then someone says, "No, there's a face. You should look at it." And then I was like, "Is that Hakeev?" Looked up a picture of Hakeev. Yeah, that's Hakeev. I'm pretty sure it's Hakeev. I'm going with it. But let's actually get into some Foundry news. This week it's about Neverwinter. So let me give you guys some of my opinions on Neverwinter so far from what I've played. I can't talk about specifically the Foundry tool, so anything inside of it I can't talk about, though I have played with it. But I could talk with you guys about how it's integrating with the game. I'm already going to say, thumbs up. It puts Stowe kind of to shame on how they integrate it with the Foundry. Let me tell you what they're doing here, Wee, because I know you haven't played with it. But in Stowe, of course, you always have to go to the Foundry tab in the to pick up your missions. That's it. Basically, it's this whole separate thing in a way from Stowe. It can be. In Neverwinter, though, they're doing a really great way of making it seamlessly flow with the game. First of all, you can still search for missions the same way you do in Stowe, so that's still there. You're able to bring up the community tab and pick up a mission through there. Now, in the game, like in some of the social zones, I believe one of them is called the Protector's Enclave, and that's like the ESD of the game. And so when you go in there, there's like a job board with a whole bunch of papers on it and stuff, and you'll go up to that, and it's basically opening up the Foundry community tab there, showing you the jobs that people want you to do. That's a really great way to integrate it into the game. I don't know why we don't have like a job board in Stowe. Like when you go to ESD, there's a terminal you can go to, you'll bring it up, and there'll be like a whole bunch of missions or assignments that are coming up that people need you to do. That's a great way to just seamlessly enter Foundry missions, because right now you just have to know there's a community author tab there when you bring up your mission journal and stuff like that. Here, there's a game, an in-way game when you're just walking around doing stuff to pick up your missions. Not only that, there's these things where campfires where you heal up and stuff, but there's usually some NPCs around there you can talk to. One of them is like a dude who's going like, you can ask, hey, what's going on in town recently? He goes, oh, here, this is going on, and it will be a random Foundry mission he gives you that you can go help out with. So seamlessly, I've known a few players, including myself, we were just walking around talking to NPCs, and just randomly, boom, a guy's giving you a Foundry mission. That's awesome. Like, it's really nice, and it fits with Neverwinter, because you think some guy would come around and go like, I need you to do this quest, and they're doing that through Neverwinter's Foundry. So really, I think it's great integration with the Foundry there, because it's pulling people into the Foundry and letting them dip their toes into it and stuff. And of course, you're getting the star ratings and stuff like that. I think we played one Foundry mission so far. I wasn't super impressed with it. It seems like one of those quick daily things, so it does look like they're going to try to have those in there. But honestly, we weren't reading as much right now, because we're not going for story. We're just going for playing. How's the gameplay over there? But I am interested to see what stories people are going to tell in there, because it does seem like there's going to be some interesting stuff over there. But other than that, I mean, the gameplay's fun. I actually do think I'll be playing it, because I was playing the Control Wizard, loved it. Their ground combat system's just fun. The abilities are fun. And the missions are just fun to play with in a group. I haven't played it solo. I don't know how I'd play solo, but I'm definitely playing in the next beta weekend to try that out. I don't know if we'll be able to talk about the Foundry still then. Hopefully we will. I know you're thinking of hopping in next beta weekend, so I'll be curious to see what you have to say.
Yeah, unfortunately I missed the last one, because I had other stuff to do.
Marvel.
But yeah, I'll be definitely catching the next one. It's later this week when this episode comes out, isn't it? And
yeah,
next week.
It's the weekend of the 22nd or something like that.
Time zone.
Yeah, time zones are weird. Fix it. But what are you thinking of rolling up? Fighter, cleric, what? Do you know yet?
I haven't looked at anything. I don't even know what classes there are. So I'm actually gonna go in at left angle. I'm gonna go in, and I'm going to act as if I know absolutely nothing about the game, because really I don't.
You don't. I didn't know much about it either.
This is what things are happening, so I'll get in there and see what happens.
Yep. So I definitely think this is going to be interesting to see how the Neverwinter tool is going to, the Foundry tool is going to integrate well, because there's definitely some stuff I really like that they're doing over there that I hope that comes to Stowe soon. With the Stowe Foundry team, which I think is one guy. I hope that one guy gets this stuff in there. But anyway, Foundry searching, or whatever I guess we're calling it, the grind mission issue. I'll let you take this away, Wee.
Well, a month ago, the Foundry reward system changed to, instead of a daily or a repeatable, it is you get the lithium energy credits and expertise upon completion of the mission, depending on what it is, with a bonus extra for spotlight missions. Now, what we said then is, how does this affect grind missions? We decided not to do it at that point, just after it came out, because it was only a couple of days. We left it a couple of weeks. At least we decided to keep it a couple of weeks. A month later, we haven't done it. So we're doing it now.
Yep.
How has this changed the grind missions and the order of them, and how are story missions being affected nowadays compared to what the mission order is? So, Murphy, what is the difference this time compared to what was a month ago?
Honestly, there is a difference, but it's not huge. Like, before we did have tons of grind missions just at the top sitting there. Now, it seems like there's kind of a mix, but there's still quite a few grind missions there at the top. Now, again, it's fine, I guess, that the Foundry has the grind missions in, but really, when you look at quality rise, they're not really top-rated material. I mean, not much effort is usually put into grind missions. There's probably a few out there that there were, but a lot of them are just slapped together just so you can go kill stuff and get your rewards. They're not really top-rated material, I think. Whereas, and story missions usually do qualify as the top-rated material, in my opinion, because a lot of effort's put into them. Now, of course, there are probably some story missions that are slapped together too, and those should not be at the top of the top-rated list. But the problem is we're seeing lots of just slapped-together missions thrown at the top because they're easy to get your rewards. And that's still kind of the case. There are still a few missions up there that are great story missions with authors who put hours and hours, days of work into these missions, and they're still at the top. I know I saw 3 or 4, I was like, oh yeah, these are good story missions, but there's still a lot of grind missions up there that I kind of facepalm at that they're in the Foundry this high up. Like, Admiral Bobo goes to war. What? That just sounds like there's an Admiral Monkey that's gonna... and I think it is a grind mission. If it is a story mission, I don't know. I think it's grind. But there are quite a few grind missions still at the top. So I still think the search system is poo, and they should fix it. I don't even know...
How is it in relation to what it was a month ago? Is it as bad where like the top 10 is like most of them are there, or is it a lot better? There's only a couple.
It's barely better. Honestly, when I look at it, it's a little better, but still, it's really hard to find story missions or good quality missions now in the search feature. And I know that's been the case since the start, but it's gotten worse since then. Because in the beginning, it was still hard to find missions when there's tons published, because it's just one long list. I think that's what really needs to be done now. We did talk about search tags and stuff last week through the Gecko interview. That really does need to be added soon, because if we're able to sort through missions easily now, that's what needs to be done. Oh, I didn't mention this. Going back in Neverwinter, though, their search feature, it's still kind of the same, but the one thing I did see in there that was awesome, don't facepalm me, this is awesome, you'll like it. There is a subscribe option for Foundry authors over there now, where you can, one, search for Foundry authors easily, and you can subscribe to a Foundry author if you like their missions. So I saw those like, awesome, love it. So
I wonder how long that's going to take before it gets into stow.
Yeah, so that was one major difference I did see. Now, there weren't tags yet over there from what I saw, so sadly, I think that's a major thing we do need to see. But other than that, I do think that's a way to fix it.
To move away from something we covered 10 minutes ago.
We've only been recording 14 minutes by my count, but anyway, I think that's it for the news this week. Anything you want to...
I've a couple of points there with the grind missions. I've been playing Spectres Part 6, the final mission, several times actually over the past couple of weeks, and I've got 2,500 dilithium upon every character completion. I've got 4 fed VAs, because I'm a Klingon player. I don't have as many fed ones as Klingons, but that's not the point. And each one of them got 2,500 dilithium.
That's pretty good. And
there's 4 of them, so that's... Do the math, what is that, 10,000? 10,500?
Yeah,
it was about that. Slightly over 2,500 per run.
How long did it take you to get that mission done?
About 15 minutes, but I was rushing through it.
That's not bad, honestly.
It was quite easy for me as well, because I equipped my boss and myself with gear that I could easily one-shot all the groups with. Especially handy with the tactical. And you just go through it, and the spotlight missions, in my opinion, are probably the best things for the Foundry mission to get the living from. Not only that, energy credits as well, because I'm not earning as much energy credits as I used to. And these Foundry missions are really helping me, because over the past couple of weeks I've earned like 200,000 energy credits per character at least, just from playing a couple of Foundry missions.
Do you think the way Foundry rewards work now, you could probably level up a tune from start just on the Foundry? Or do you think it's still kind of hard to do that?
I actually tried it on the low level character, and I barely got any ECs, which is unfortunate, and I hardly got any expertise. It was barely an increase. It was barely a tenth of an increase of a bar. Never mind an entire level. So it's.
So it's still like it was, where you could do it, but it would take much longer than standard missions.
My character was a Commander 28, and I played Spectres Part 6 again, and I can't remember how much expertise it was. Like 1,500, 2,000, I think, as much maybe on a VA. I only got less than. I only got about 850-ish on a Commander 28. So it's not really that much. It's not the most recommended I do in the world to expertise, but for getting a seasoned Dilithium, I would highly recommend doing spotlight missions, particularly ones you can pick that you filter out quicker than others.
Well, hey, we got a review coming up, but first, quick tips.
This week is class issues and mission scaling. Basically, all I need to say here is be good at stacking your mobs, because if you're bad at it, it's going to make your mission a little more difficult for... let's go with class issues first. For class issues, usually if you stack mobs, for tacticals and engineers, you're not going to have much of a big problem. But with science, it can kind of get screwed up, especially if they're not a medic and able to keep themselves alive. If they're using something else, it could be tough for them to take on 2 captain mobs or something like that. Whereas maybe a good spec tactical or engineer character could easily still take on those mobs. Now, sometimes when you're reskinning space mobs and stuff like that, because different ships are appearing with those mobs, it can kind of get messed up in group play. So say you have the Dreadnought squad or the Battleship squad on there. Maybe the person didn't skin their ships right, so that's kind of screwing it up there, where you might actually be facing like generic ships instead of Undine ships, but when squatting up, an Undine ship will actually appear because it wasn't skinned or whatever. Sometimes that can be an issue. But also another issue, which is the major one here in this category, the other one wasn't as huge, but this one's pretty huge, is sometimes when you're stacking space mobs and stuff like that up, because I know in my own mission I had a huge fleet battle that's pretty epic for a solo player, but when more people came in to help that player, it's really easy just to blow up all those space mobs in a split second. So sometimes that can kind of screw up a mission's flow, because of course you want the big space battles to be nice and epic, whereas in a group play it really turned out to be just easy blow through, and so that can be kind of a problem with mission scaling. But basically that's it. Just watch out how you're stacking your mobs.
And welcome to the review. We are reviewing part 2 of Captain Revo's series, The Hunter Killer. Part 1 last week was Crouching Tiger Claw,
Hidden Demon. I think I get it mixed up. Like I think I typed it out like reverse. Like the first part was second and the second part was first. It was just like it's a long title.
But anyway, we have a bit of basic information before we get started. As of this recording, it has 2,971 players. Pretty decent, nearly 3,000. Star rating of 4.17. Again, pretty decent considering the amount of players. And like we've just mentioned, part 2 of this series. Part 2 of 5. So expect the next 3 parts over the next 3 episodes, not 3 weeks necessarily. We'll get into that later. But, Murphy, what do we have to say about the story of this mission?
First of all, that was some great basic information there. You kept it really basic, and I want to congratulate you on that. Let's get into the advanced stuff now. So if you need to take something before we get into this advanced stuff, get ready. I
specialize at basic things. Do well at this.
Do good. Anyway, here we go. So, the story picks up as you are sent out to investigate a Romulan base just across the border. However, all is not as it seems when, Herodian hunting party's there, and now you've got to deal with them. So, that's the basic premise for this next mission that you will be taking part of. I like that it's completely different than the first part, because usually you're used to like you kind of know what you're getting into, but this one it does kind of change things up a bit, which is nice and refreshing. The plot was good, but we had very different opinions on this. So I'll let him go first, because when we did our discussion before the show, I think we just nailed it. Like it worked. So go ahead, what did you think of the plot?
Well, to start out with, I think that many players would think this direction of this mission would go pretty linear, a bit like the first one. Because in the first one, you had a basic thing, you tracked the source, and you went for it. And in this mission, I think people would expect the same thing, but that's not the case. You go into what you expect to be a pretty linear storyline, but it actually comes at a completely left angle. The Herodian all of a sudden appear in this series, and you don't expect it at all. And that is where our opinions slightly differ on the introduction of the Herogen and how they play a part. Because I know you kind of, what was that, a cliche? And you
Cliche.
kind of stereotypical.
Yeah, the problem I had was you really liked it because it kind of it went left field for you, like you didn't expect that to happen.
Yeah.
I didn't know the Herogen were going to be in this mission, but when they showed up, I was just kind of like, the Herogen. It's a Herogen surprise party. Because my problem is there's been a lot of cryptic missions where it's, oh, surprise, the Herogen are behind this, and now you've got to fight them, and you got to fight the minions while the Alpha taunts you, and then the Alpha determines, oh, you're worthy enough for my hunt, and then you easily kill him. You're just like, whatever. I found that the case in this Foundry mission, which was kind of like, I've seen this in other Foundry missions, in Cryptic Mate missions, and even in the show. The problem was, it's probably because I don't like the Herogen overall, is they're cliche, and I didn't like that this kind of took a cliche turn with the Herogen. And because we had a big discussion on this, and eventually just hit, well, they were cliche in Voyager.
Yeah, there wasn't much variety in the limited lore they had, because all they were good for in Voyager, and that's really carried on to this game, is they were out about in the Delta Quadrant, hunting races for their own predatory instincts to get carried forward. And it's the same thing here, except that Steel is giving them part of space to actually do their hunting, which is a bit of canon usage in this mission. This is the part of space they're wandering into, by the way. And that kind of thing carries on with all of the Alphas encountered throughout the series and in this game as well. And the Alpha in this mission kind of is no different, but in my opinion, he's a little better well made, because, I mean, that holodeck episode with Voyager, I think the Alpha was really
I really
good.
liked that one. Yeah.
It was different.
Well, because they took it in a different way than they usually do with the Herogen. That's what I really liked about that episode. And I do like it when they... I don't know, I haven't played a mission in Stowe where they've really done that. It's always been when I see the Herogen, they're trying to hunt you. And I haven't had that moment where it's like, one, trying to do something different, like, we need to change our ways for the Herogen because, one, they're cliche, and two, this isn't how we should live out our lives anymore because it's just going to lead us downhill. And I would have liked maybe something like that, but I could see why you had the Herogen here, just as a nice twist of things there. But anyway, that was our opinion on plot there. A little bit with the characters too. You liked him more than me, just because I still felt
I like the Alpha just as a pointer, and because he kept taunting you throughout the mission. It's one of those guys. I mean, it was emphasized more, this Herogen, more than one in the series. One quite as different from that holodeck episode, but I really liked him because he was more taunting. He was more arrogant. He expected to defeat you with like one fistful or something like that, but you got an entire away team, whatever. It's nothing to do with what I have in my series. Not at all.
Not at all. No, not like Jadok, that green guy who's in Orion anyway. So, anyway, nope. Anyway, so I know we both agree here on dialogue, though. It was really well written compared to Part 1. Part 1, we kind of had the problem where a few of them were just kind of like 2 or 3 words. It was like, nothing much you can take away from here. But this mission, it was really well written. I really enjoyed it. I know you remember the parts where you like talked with the Nausicaan and the Orion. That was spot on for like an Orion or Nausicaan you would talk to, because I really liked it.
That was good, yeah. That was really good, because it shows a different variety of the Klingon Empire, and it's not just limited to Klingons.
And it did work also for the Herogen. I will say the Herogen, while it was cliche, it was still well written for an Herogen. That's what I expected for it.
There is one little thing I'd like to add about the dialogue.
Go ahead.
Captain speak. It's at least in my opinion, it's assuming that the captain is basically Klingon.
Klingon, yeah.
I noticed no other options really for Orions and Nausicans and going something other than a Klingon that's aggressive. In this, it's typical Klingon dialogue, and that's really good. But there's little variety, because I think that what primarily comes down to is when this mission was made, the Orions, the Gorn, the Nausicaans, all that kind of stuff weren't as emphasized as they are nowadays.
Yeah, because they've got their own ships and uniforms.
Yeah,
and
they've
stuff.
got their own ships, and they're more prominent, and especially like the Gorn Rebellion and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and if you look around, how many people are playing Gorn and Orions on the Klingon side? Because one, the Gorn are cool. So everybody wants to play the coolest race on that side, which is the Gorn. Come on, who doesn't want to play a giant laser?
9-foot scaly.
Yeah, I know, that's awesome.
Vaporizing with a bite.
And then you've got the Orions, which are like the sex appeal. I mean, who doesn't want to run around in a bikini? Or at least, okay, I should have rephrased that totally. And let's move on from that point. But anyway, so you've got those. They're not voiced in that, and I know when we had like Ceridium and the rest of them on a while back, it was like episode 5 or whatever for Klingon storytelling tips. One point we did try to cover was
you kind of got to focus on writing dialogue options for all those races. So maybe have a Cleon option, a Gorn option, and all that stuff as branching dialogue options. So it's kind of obvious, oh, this fits my Gorn captain, or this fits my Nausicaan. Stuff like that, instead of just having one. Because I think, especially on the Cleon side, it's key to have branching dialogue like that available. Where on the Fed side, everybody's still kind of a Starfleet officer. They still have to follow regulation no matter what race they are.
There's very little in Starfleet and the Federation. I mean, the only real differences would be Vulcans because they're logical. That's about it. Yeah.
So they won't show emotion, but all the other races, yeah.
Or Packlids if you want to play as them.
Packlids.
Who plays a Packlid?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't seen anybody play a Packlid for life. It's like Packlid, Ferengi, and Red Jellian. But Helden is awesome, so... Anyway, canon contradictions, and there were no canon contradictions in the mission. Blah, here we go, Murphy virus. And there was some very good touchstoning on the Hirogen and the relations with the Romulans, because, of course, they were given hunting grounds in this area, and that's been a commonality through playing missions with Hirogen. This is usually the hunting ground they were given, so they're going to hunt anybody who comes on it.
The 24/9 by
yep.
yeah.
And there was some other touchstoning still, like on Romulans, and I don't know if they touched on as much on Fakiri this one. They didn't seem to be a big emphasis in this one as much.
No, I think they were only referenced a couple of times on Mission 1, so not
yeah,
big.
So we don't know what's going to go on with them. I assume that's going to be picked up in a future part, though. And then there's no grammar and spelling issues. Story, tied for 16th place with a score of 8.36. It tied with The Longing by Rachel Garrett, and this one I haven't heard of. Temple of the Paw Wraiths by Captain Revo. I guess that's a new author or something.
Hang on. Don't you mean The Younging?
So, in technical, the maps were really good with some customization. The space maps were pretty good, and they were heavily customized, but ground maps, not so much. You could still recognize them from multiple cryptic missions in the game. And that's because there's not a lot of Romulan art assets. You've got some tables, door, consoles.
Console, yeah. And of
that's
course,
about it.
Odd grey flaw and in cryptic maps, and you'd think traditionally it would be sort of like the flaws would be green with like white lines on the side or something along those lines. And that's not really the case. I mean, you Foundry authors who were really good at building maps like 800 feet in the sky. You try making a Romulan interior. If you thought making a Klingon interior was bad, a Romulan interior is nigh and impossible. I tried it myself, and granted I don't have the skills of some of the other guys out there, but it was extremely difficult.
Yeah.
There were very few Romulan assets I could use.
Yeah, it was even hard for me when I had to make like a custom Dominion one. I just had to go with generic stuff, because it's like, there's nothing for Dominion in there. So... At least Romulans have a little bit. If you start trying to branch out into races like that, though, can you imagine Cardassian? I don't think they have many Cardassian ones either, so that'd be really hard to pull off as well. I think they've got the walls. Yeah, you know what? Actually, it is, because they do have the walls, and I think the floors match up a little nicer than some of the generic floors. But they're still in the same boat as the Romulans. So that's, I think, as we go through technical, you're going to see a lot of that. The problems are going to be just with the limited art assets. Now, there were good transitions in this mission. There weren't really any pointless maps, and there was a good deal to do on each map. A few times, maybe, you might feel like, but generically, I didn't find myself hitting a loading screen going, How did you feel?
Well, there were one or two maps that I felt like we just go over here and transition to the next map, but it was very limited. The rest of them felt good progression. I mean, most of the time, I felt like I was going into a map and doing an appropriate amount of things to move on to the next map, because I mean, you go into a base or two with like 3 levels, and it felt really, really progressive. There were no like pointless things where you just go over there for 1 second and there you go. So it really felt really good in this mission.
Yep. The author also shows great knowledge of the tool through his use of optional interactable objects and triggers. There's some nice things that he does when you trigger one thing, and you don't even have to trigger it through the mission. It's an optional thing. It does something else on the map, and that's really cool to see, because that is a little bit more difficult to pull off. Art asset usage was poor, partially due to the limitations that were available. So again, it was a good effort to try to customize the maps with what was given, but again, not much Romulan stuff there. Which also kind of goes into creativity. There wasn't much creative-wise, because usually a lot of maps will contribute to the creativity stuff. But other than story, for Wee Wee there wasn't much there to see creativity-wise. Good instructions in this mission, though. It was telling you clearly where to go, the waypoints, and the objectives were clearly stated on the right-hand side. There was, again, in Foundry limitations, there was a bit of a debate over the reskinning.
because again, he reskins one of the Hirogen battleships to be the Dreadnought. While the Dreadnought looks tons cooler than the battleship, again, it feels like, oh, I just blew up a Dreadnought really easily.
Yeah.
It takes away from the epic feel.
In this instance, it felt a bit more weird because, based on the, I'll get into this later in the gameplay. This usually follows, but this is a follow-up from 2 previous mobs that you have to kill, and it felt like that really should have just been a battleship rather than a Dreadnought. It felt more limiting in this fashioning. I mean, it really would have suited as a battleship. It didn't really need to be a Dreadnought.
And there wasn't really a story reason for it either, because even if it was like the command ship of the Hirogen, it still could have been pulled off as a battleship. I don't see why it needed to be a Dreadnought. And then it did lose a few points, though. I hadn't taken off any points for the reskinning thing, but it did lose a few points for the lack of Romulan assets in the Foundry, because, again, it did limit the technical stuff quite a bit, because you only had a few options to pick from in customizing the interiors and stuff, but it wasn't much there. Technical scored a 6.0, perfect score there. 26th rank in technical, so good. I think really the only part it could use improvement in later, if more art assets become available, is to just more customization and stuff, because I'm hoping more Romulan art assets get added as this big Romulan patch comes up soon. So hopefully we do see that. But hey, why don't we talk about gameplay now?
Well, we'll start with some basic stuff. Space gameplay, as always.
Because we like basic stuff.
A bit more than you do. Space gameplay was fairly weak, unfortunately, in this mission. There's not much to do besides move to a waypoint or 2 in a couple of maps, and that's about it. It's mainly dictated by the combat, so it was really let down, I feel, in that side of things. But the combat was engaging. Multi-stacked Hirogen groups makes the combat very interesting. More encounters after this, which are also multi-stacked, allows for more interesting in the combat. This is one of the groups with the Dreadnought. We've already covered that. And Hirogen mobs in space are harder than other groups traditionally, which therefore makes the combat even more interesting. You will not like getting subnuked. I tried it myself, and I got subnuked twice. It wasn't very nice, especially in a battle cruiser. But we did enjoy ourselves on this mission. The Hirogen are tough, and that's what makes it enjoyable, despite the frustration of the subnukes. There is better ground. Ground gameplay was pretty engaging, a bit more than space. Plenty of optional things to do, ranging from interacting with dead bodies to freeing prisoners. A choice is presented to the player in this mission at one point as well, which is entirely optional, so it's not part of the actual objective, so to say. But there is a couple of choices, and it's up to the player to choose which one will you do, and you'll have to find out for yourself when you actually play the mission. I'm not going to say it. There are no puzzles in this mission, but I think this is one of those instances where the gameplay does in general make up for that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some instances puzzles are kind of necessary, but in this instance it's not really, because there are so many optional things to do and so many choices that it really does make up the gameplay in a pretty engaging way. What do you think of that?
For especially gameplay, I feel missions that have a lot of optional stuff to do and puzzles, that's where it's going to score the best in gameplay. But even if you're able to just do one of them, whether it's just doing the optional ones like this or just doing a puzzle like some other missions out there, it's still going to get a pretty good score in gameplay aspects for just doing stuff non-combat wise. And I think there was enough non-combat stuff to do in this mission that was great, that it didn't need a puzzle, because there's sometimes I just want to play a mission and I don't want to have to think and do a puzzle. I just want to go around and shoot stuff and then press F to do stuff simply. But so I was fine with not having a puzzle in this mission, because having puzzles and missions back to back to back to back can sometimes get annoying. So I was glad. This mission's fine without a puzzle. So
yeah, I think you've said it before as well, that puzzles can't be necessary in some instances because people get frustrated and doing it constantly, part after part after part, especially in this mission, a 5-part series. If there was a puzzle in each one of these parts, it would be kind of frustrating in a bit.
Yeah, even in the cryptic missions. Yeah, look at the featured series. They don't do a puzzle in every one, and when they kind of did with the Davidian series, it was like episode 2 had that big puzzle, and then 3 kind of had, I don't know if 3 had like major puzzles, but 4 I know had like 3 puzzles throughout that mission with McCoy in it. And by like the second puzzle, it's like, I already did a puzzle, and by the last puzzle, it was just like, oh my god, I don't want to do this puzzle. Yeah. So, and it was because they were all dialogue puzzles.
Yeah, the last one, the Divinity series, is kind of a biased one because it was terrible anyway.
Yeah.
No offense, cryptic. But anyway.
Hey, I like the mixing drink puzzle in 5 though, so.
We got a bit of ground combat in this mission as well. It was also very engaging, so generally ground pretty good in this mission. multiple different enemy types, ranging from Romulans and Herodian to other factions, allows for variety. Even spiders make an appearance in this mission. You have to fight giant spiders at
Awesome.
when you're boarding a station, so it's not really expected until you come across them. And also expect a couple of other factions to pop up one or two different ways as well. Herodian, again, they're on the ground. They tend to be difficult to fight on the ground, and in some ways more difficult than in space. Primarily because of their Tetron weapons and their knives. They will obliterate your shields and just stab you to death, basically. Combat in general in that instance was therefore fairly difficult. It's manageable with the tactical, but it can be difficult in some instances with a not-so-spec character like Yuma.
Hey, my character was spec'd. Screw you.
Well, only because I gave you the build.
Actually, Bridger gave me my Fed build, so...
One improvement, anyway, that could be made to this is the ability to multi-stack groups. It's not really present on this... in this sort of area as it is on space. It's partially made up for because high-level groups are present. I noticed a base in one of the early groups of Herodian as well, which indicates it's a Lieutenant Commander level group. But multi-stacker groups allows the player to think of tactics. So imagine maybe a couple of Herodian groups in a room, for example, and it's up to the player to draw one out, kill it, and then draw the other one out, and to make it that much harder for the a captain levels.
Yeah.
Don't make it too hard. I already covered this in previous ones, but generally that's usually a good idea. But in this mission, it kind of makes up for it because the Herodian are difficult anyway.
Well, that, and I didn't have a problem with him using different mobs, because I think having different mobs kept the combat refreshing, even though it was single squads throughout the whole mission. I don't know if it really needed stacking in a way, because even if you stack Herodian mobs, they're already difficult on their own at some point, so stacking them could make it really difficult for other players. So, again, that kind of goes into our quick tips. Make sure you test it with all the classes or something, so you know.
Yeah, not too much of a takeaway for the combat, like ground gameplay, but it's very good nonetheless, so thumbs up there. There is a bit of replayability in this mission, it is present. There are several decisions that are opened up to the player in this mission. Main ones are optional. There's not really any options in the primary linear different objectives you have to do, and they're mainly optional, ranging from dead bodies to doing a couple of other things, which I've mentioned earlier. I'm not going to spoil it again. It's debatable on this front, but several options are present so the mission can be considered multi-path, theoretically.
Yeah.
There's limited alternate dialogue, as we've mentioned earlier. It's mainly focused on alternate decisions for the player to make, but generally replayability it's pretty good in this mission, I'd say.
Yeah, it was alright. I don't know if I'd replay it with some of the options there because they were very limited, but it is there, so if you went back and replayed it, you could do some other stuff.
Overall, gameplay scored a 7.07, and happened to be tied with a certain mission called Temporal Par Race, tied 18th, which also happens to be a Revo mission and something that he tied in his story as well. Good consistency there, Revo.
Yeah, very good.
Keep it
So,
up.
what do we think overall, Wee?
Overall, it's a great part 2 to the series with a very different turn of events to keep the story fresh. It leaves the player wanting to see what happens in the next part 3.
Yeah.
Including myself. Some fun gameplay and some good technical work both combined makes this a worthwhile mission to check out. 7.17 in 23rd place is what it scored.
Yeah, so next week we'll be checking out part 3. I'm really excited to see where that goes because it definitely has that cliffhanger that makes you go, what? I need to know what happens next. So great pulling that off there because you always want to do that in a series. So we'll be covering part 3 next week. We will be covering part 2 story spoilers from this mission if we need to talk about it for the next mission. So make sure you play this part so we don't spoil it for you in case you listen to the next review and you haven't played it yet. But that's it. Let's get into our discussion on the 5-star rating system. Lots to talk about there, guys. Let's go. And welcome to our Foundry discussion. This week we are covering the 5-star rating system. Lots of different opinions on this. Some people hate it. Some people really hate it. Some people dislike it. Some people kind of dislike it but hate it. And some people like it. Wow, there's not a lot of like.
Don't say that in that way because it's just confusing. I'm sorry.
Remember, we likes it basic. So
his fault.
Anyway, let's start with the pros and cons of a 5-star rating system. And what we think are the pros of the system and the cons. Because, of course, with everything, there's pros and cons.
A pro I'm going to say right off the bat is it's simple to use. Not really hard to think, oh, do I give it a 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1? Really intuitive. You see it and you know what to do. The only problem is, a con for that is, it's a little too simple to judge a Foundry mission. And it's really vague on what qualifies as a 5-star, a 4-star, stuff like that.
What that primarily comes down to is how the player interprets the 5-star rating system. I mean, for example, one player could be fanatically involved with this mission, and maybe a series, and give it a 5-star, but is disappointed by the second part and give it a 1-star, but it's not that bad compared to somebody else. So
they're really going with the in the Foundry it says, I think for 5 stars, I enjoyed the mission or I liked the mission, and 1 star it says I don't like the mission. And it's like, okay, with that mentality, you really only need a thumbs up or a thumbs down at that point. Because it's like, what do you fill in between it? Like, it was okay. So I think it definitely... The problem there is the 5-star rating system with what Cryptic's giving us isn't really telling players what really constitutes 5 stars or a 3-star mission. So it's really up for the player to decide. So the way I judge is going to be completely different from somebody else in the 5-star rating system. The way I do it is 5 stars for a mission I think is really high quality and I really enjoyed it. A mission that's 4 stars is I enjoyed the mission, but the quality could be improved. I might have had an issue with it, but it's still really good. 3 stars is average, if I feel it's just fun to play, but it could still use some work, or I didn't really enjoy it that much, but still good quality. 2 stars is what I usually tend to give out instead of what most people would give a 1 star for, is I didn't enjoy the mission, but I at least see some quality there, like an author put some time and effort into it.
Some potential.
Yeah, and 1 star is usually, oh, this was just a goof mission, haha, very funny, 1 star.
In other words, the most terrible thing on the face of the earth.
I've rarely given out a 1 star for the most terrible thing on the face of the earth. Irish would probably call me out. I remember I gave him a 1 star, and he's never let me give an over. The fact that his first mission I gave a 1 star for.
You gave Irish a 1 star.
I did, because he put like 5 Gorn mobs on the bridge of one ship, and it made like no sense, and I couldn't fight it because, again, suck at the game. But so I gave him a 1 star. And this is before I knew him, so it was just like, oh. So he never let me live it down. Like, that was your mission? Oh. So, but anyway, that's how my 5-star rating system works. How does... I assume yours is different than that, Wee, right?
Well, the way I judge it's how I feel actually at the end of the mission. Is did it progress really well? And if it did, it should be alright. And if it had a disappointing ending, then maybe it'll lower score to a 4, maybe a 3-star. So it's actually for me, and actually this is probably common for a few other people as well, of how you feel at the end of the mission. Were you let down by the ending, or were you really enthusiastic about the ending?
So your final thoughts when that box pops up and you have to write your review.
Yeah, and sometimes when it's the most terrible thing on the face of the earth, if not worse, if that's even possible, sometimes just simply drop the mission in the early stages or halfway through the mission and say, this is the most terrible thing on the face of the earth, 1 star.
I found myself not
I don't
using
actually
it.
share that. I give some criticism, but
positive feedback. Remember, that was one of our discussions in the past. Positive feedback. But I found myself at one period in time not using the 5-star rating system. In fact, every time it would pop up, I just hit cancel. I wouldn't leave a review at all.
Yeah,
now,
I did that for a long time as well.
Because I absolutely did not like the way the 5-star rating system worked at the time, because I didn't feel it was a good way for me giving feedback. One, because I don't think 5 stars really work for covering how you overall feel on a mission. And second of all, you're only given 180 characters for your typed up part. So at that point, I was just like, cancel. If I really need to talk to the author, I'll send them an email where I can actually go, boom, tons of stuff. But then I realized you're not really giving feedback at all. It's no feedback, whereas some feedback is still good feedback for an author to get, even if it's not necessarily good feedback. Maybe you have some negative stuff to say on the mission, but it's still feedback, good for the author to know. Whereas when I hit the cancel button, it wasn't really giving them feedback. Plus, it wasn't really, especially, I think I really got back into it when we played For Every Action, because with that series, it only had like 30 plays, which was surprising to me. So I felt, yeah, I should give this a 5-star, because one, I really think it deserves a 5-star, and plus, it for whatever reason, it's not getting a lot of plays. So my 5-star at that point really means a lot to boost that score up. So, are there any other pros and cons we can think of the system, or should we move on to is this system really needed?
Well, that's kind of a debatable point really. I think we should move on to that part, and I'll start off by saying that, is it needed? Pros and con again. We really need to look at this sort of area a little bit more in detail in this sort of section, because what are the pros of this? pros of keeping the system is kind of it'll enable missions that are really, really good to stay up there. It will allow players to play this great mission over and over again, or at least once, however many times they want to, and enjoy themselves. But there's a problem with that. It lowers down some of the missions at the same time. Some which are not as good, not as epic. I mean, half the missions in Foundry aren't as epic, in my opinion, as some of the ones Adamak has played out. And this is the kind of situation we find ourselves in on a regular basis. And it's a pro and a con in that area. And a con of having no system really is there one.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I could really think of is lack of, I suppose, prestige, lack of image, lack of knowledge about this mission, lack of players. But it's not really much of an issue if it's all listed and they enable like a subscribe option. I think which they did in Neverwinter, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a pro to this of having no system would be essentially allow you to play multiple missions at the same time. I mean, granted, you won't be able to give proper feedback, but you can easily send that in a mail or something, and maybe expand that 180 characters to maybe 1,000. Hint, hint. So it's
That'd be nice.
What are your opinions on that?
I do think some sort of rating system is needed. Now, it's weird because for a while there, I was one of those people who was completely against rating systems, and I'll probably get into this more when we talk about because Foundry Files, we use our own rating system. We hated the 5-star rating system, and so ditched it. And Irish developed the one that we use still today. Now, when we first started using it, though, I really was against it. Like, I was like, do we really want to be using this? I don't like the way ratings work. I'd rather just talk about a mission. But for some people, they're numbers people, and they like to give things numbers and rankings and compare them to other ones like that. I'm not necessarily one of those people. I've probably become more one of those people through the show and stuff like that. But I find more important the words you give somebody in a mission. Like, for when we give out a score in Foundry Files, that's nice and all, but I really like to talk about the mission, why I got that score and stuff like that. So,
yeah,
I wouldn't have a problem maybe if they took the ranks out and just gave comments at that point. But the problem there, as I start seeing, is when the rating system worked, because we know right now it's not working with grinds and stuff, because if you look at the top of the top rated stuff, there's some crap up there that no time's been put into. And that's just because people are using the 5-star system different from others. They're just saying, hey, I liked it. Hey, thanks for getting me my rewards quick. Here's 5 stars for you, even though really when you look at it as comparing it to other missions, quality and stuff, they're not really 5 stars. So the problem you have with the search is it's just one big long list. Maybe if it was different categories, it'd be easier to search through and rank. But as it was... Go ahead.
I was going to say, it sounds a little like the tag system everybody suggests.
I think that would help alleviate some of the problems.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and I think just on a related note, I think it's that way. I think that kind of relates to how improved the reviews of the mission. Because if you think about it, if you take the way we break them down, and not as in depth, story, technical, and gameplay, that sort of simple things, not to the in-depth things of gameplay, and space gameplay, and that kind of stuff. But if we had that kind of review of story, technical, and gameplay, people could theoretically 5-star each one of those. So they could break down in a bit like we did, but to the basics.
I'd like that.
A 5-star for story, 3-star for technical, maybe a 4-star for gameplay or something.
Because those
average out between the scores.
Those are like the key 3 sections at least of a Foundry mission. Story, and there's all the subcategories in there. But maybe for people in game, just score the story. Because if you tried to make them fill out one of our score sheets, good luck with that for the average gamer even. Because even the average gamer, they never even cared about the star system. They just clicked, okay, 3 stars. So at least now they had to select. But yeah, I definitely think splitting it up would be nice because all the missions are different. Because even right now, you've just got one long list of a very different amount of missions, and that's kind of the problem I think the star system is having right now. Because whereas before with the rating system, when all the missions were pretty much the same, basically trying to tell you a story, you had a long list that was pretty well sorted through the star rating system. A lot of the good stuff was at the top. Some okay stuff managed to make it up there, but for general, if you looked at the top rated missions, it It was probably something you were going to enjoy. Now you've got Admiral Bobo Goes to War. Not really something you're looking for at the top of your top rate list for a lot of people probably watching this show. But say you were able to separate it out, so you could review a mission for good story. Maybe it wasn't great and technical, and maybe the gameplay was eh. That would probably be your high-ranked story mission on the top rated. But maybe for something that's just go in and kill stuff, you give it a 1 in story, probably a 1 in technical because not much time spent in that, but maybe a 5 in gameplay because it's really fun to play. So then it would average it out as an overall star rating, which would appear maybe in the overall search feature. I think something like that would be great to see because you're able to split it off into 3 main categories instead of just having one generic overall category that nobody really knows how to score. Is that all? I don't know if there's anything else you want to add in there. I think that's all I have to say. That's my suggestion. I think the same one you're giving here of how we would change it.
Well, we've got our little opinions on the pros and cons on this sort of stuff, but I think this is a really, really big topic.
Yeah.
And I think different opinions from different people would be appreciated. So if you guys have any suggestions on how to improve this system, email us at foundryfiles@gmail.com.
That goes for you in the back row there, dude. You back there, we want your email. Don't ignore me. Send us the email. But yeah, so
actually, ignore him, yeah. You can listen to me, but you can ignore him.
Whatever. It's important. If I'm telling you to email us, it's important. And if I'm giving moral lessons out on the show, you should probably listen as well. So we agrees. Anyway. Go over to jupiterforce.org. If you go into the Foundry Files section there, if you go to our whole episode list, we're up to 20 now, so boom. At the top of that, I've stickied a thread where you can go check out our Foundry Files ranking table. This shows like 30 missions, the 30 missions we reviewed in the course of the show, all ranked up there so you can see what scores they've gotten, which one you might be interested in. See the good story quality missions out there we've checked out. Maybe you were looking for a gameplay mission. Go check out one of those. Whole bunch of missions there, so if you're looking for something else to play, and maybe this week's mission isn't good enough, maybe you want to play some more, go check out past catalog because there's tons of great missions there. Just so people know, we are kind of on iTunes right now. So I just figured out today, actually, that Stoked Radio got on iTunes through... Okay, so our episodes get posted along with Stoked Radios on the front of the Jupiter Force forums. And so basically the RSS feed there is getting put on iTunes there. So if you search for Stoked Radio, Foundry Files looks like it's going to be thrown into there, but you can still search for Foundry Files on iTunes. You just have to click on Stoked Radio. You'll see it in there mixed up. So if you're one of those people who like to listen to podcasts as you go, like me, you can still download it from there now. Only episode 19 is posted. I don't know if any of the past ones are going to get uploaded there, but hopefully. It's nice to have that though, because I'm one of those people who will listen to all the podcasts as I go. Because oh my god, the podcast UGC 4-hour thing, I was so glad I was able to listen to that on the go. So it's definitely podcasts are good on the go, and so I was always. Go ahead.
The thing about that, Murphy, is the fact that you're perfectly willing to listen to the podcast on that sort of thing, but nobody's willing to listen to you.
Wow. That was so mean. Before I go cry, just to let you guys know, there will be an episode next week, but we are taking off the following week for spring break because there will be like little kids here shouting and screaming and stuff, and you probably want... That's it. You know what? Fine, I'm leaving.
I think I've had no revenge for one there. Anyway, see you next week, guys.